Hello, everyone. Welcome to PA 615-70, Public Financial Management. Again, my name is Mark Fudge. I'm your instructor for this course, and I just want to give you a review of Module 1, what we've covered and have been are currently covering, and what we can look forward to as we move forward into Module 2. So a lot of times I get questions as to why are there two essentially budgeting courses in this program? Why do we study public financial management along with public budgeting and finance? And I think if you think about it, not even too deeply, but just on the surface, you realize that a lot of the things that we want to accomplish in government, in society as a whole, requires that we have sufficient resources. And spending more time than usual on this aspect of government is important. But in addition to that, the two courses that we have in our MPA program are distinctly different. Whereas public budgeting and finance, PA 663, looks at the fiscal year of finances from beginning to end. Really, we begin with the budgetary process and understanding that what goes into the decision-making situations that lawmakers and policy analysts deal with. Also, how the public interjects their opinion, lobbyists, different groups. And it really takes a 12, probably more, 15 to 16 month perspective, beginning with the preparation of the budget, going through the processes, gaining some type of cooperation between the distinct areas, all the way up until the end of the fiscal year, where we have accumulated resources. We have also used our tax powers to accumulate other resources, and then spent those resources to deliver services. When we look at public financial management, however, one of the things that becomes apparent is that organizations don't necessarily think from a 12 or even 16 month perspective. A lot of times things that are occurring within an organization happen on a day-to-day basis, and we're thinking about things from a short-term perspective. So when we study public financial management, it really looks at the day-to-day management practices of an organization, how they manage their resources on a day-to-day basis, thinking about cash flows, internal controls, different types of financing structures. So that's where the two courses are different, but they're also very complementary. So I think the two courses, a lot of times students will suggest or ask if they should have one before the other. I'm not sure how much of a difference it makes, but for this particular course, it is assumed that you have some background in budgeting, and it's probably preferable that you've had 663, but it's not necessary. So as a result, the first three chapters of the book in 615 really serve as a review of the budgeting class that you may or may not have had. So that's really the reasons why we have these two courses in our program. But when we look at public financial management from a broader perspective, and even from a societal and a public manager perspective, it deals with the idea of decision-making. Previously, we discussed the notion of scarce resources and how when there are a lack of resources, it makes it challenging to determine which organization or which sector, which area is going to receive funding for a particular project or a particular purpose. So the decision-making perspective is very important. And coupled with the fact that we're dealing with scarce resources, the decision-making process becomes even that much more important. Hopefully you've been able to take a look at this, the video and the lecture on government and the economy and social equity. And throughout the course of this quarter, we'll examine public financial management ideas or topics through the lens of social equity. As I mentioned, the first three chapters in the Finkler book serve as a review of the 663 course. If you've taken it, if you haven't taken it, it essentially gives you some background in those topics. So one of the things that becomes important is the operating budget and how that is distinguished from a capital budget. Also, within those first three chapters, we've looked at different approaches to budgeting, whether it be performance budgeting or zero-based budgeting, just to give you some background before we delve into the nitty-gritty of public financial management. So, part of the requirements for this class are your self-assessment journals and your social equity essays. I've actually posted examples of each. An example of a self-assessment journal that you can look at, and you can find that on Blackboard. And also an example of a social equity essay that's also been posted on Blackboard. But the self-assessment journals really have three primary focus or focal points. What did you learn from this particular module? What topics or areas need to be explained in a little bit more detail? And then there's a module-specific question just based on the content and the topic of that particular module. The social equity essays, again, examine a public financial management topic through the lens of social equity and also fairness, and how we make those decisions and how the decisions that we do make have an impact on individuals and groups of individuals in various communities within our society. So there will be three scheduled Zoom sessions for this class. The first one will be next Tuesday, January 15th at 6 p.m. All the Zoom sessions will be at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. Now, I understand that many of you may have class on Tuesday or work or have some other responsibility, so they'll all be recorded, and the Zoom sessions aren't required. They're not mandatory. If you can make it, that's great. But if you cannot, I understand, and you'll be able to watch it at a later date and time. One of the things with the Zoom session, so one of the things that has been incorporated with this class is something called a Zoom room. So when you go into Blackboard, you'll see on your left-hand side, there's a tab that says Zoom room. So when we do have the Zoom sessions, if you simply click on that tab, that'll bring you into the Zoom session. You don't have to be invited or to have a particular ID. You simply click on the Zoom session or the Zoom room, and it'll take you right into the session. In addition to that, while you're free to email me questions that you may have, give me a call, and obviously stop by my office hours. If you want to schedule a time to meet synchronously, let me know through email or telephone call, however, and we can do a private Zoom session together, and simply by going into the Zoom room as well. All right. Now, Tuesday's Zoom, in addition to the class lecture, which will look at the comprehensive annual financial report and analysis of that and how that's constructed, and also the other topic is understanding costs. I will review the literature review that's due later on this quarter, and also answer preliminary questions that you may have regarding the final research paper on assessing financial conditions, just so that you see how that relates to the literature review and also the overall scope of the class. All right, so other than that, have a good weekend, a good rest of your week, and I will see you next week. Thank you.